Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the 2024 AEOP Internships and Fellowship Speaker Series. We're very excited to have you join us all today. I'm Kiera McGinnis. I'm an outreach specialist for the AEOP Internships and Fellowships program, and it's my pleasure to host today's session and introduce this exciting series of talks that unites our community to explore STEM opportunities and career pathways. So the AEOP Internships and Fellowship Speaker Series aims to build community and facilitate learning. Through this series, we'll introduce you to the opportunities within STEM and provide insights into various career paths. Our goal is to help you fully leverage all that AEOP internships and fellowships offers, including our wonderful masterclasses in the AEOP Learning Hub, the newly announced leadership certificate, as well as our next step opportunities introduced at each speaker series session. So before we start our session, we have some exciting news. 4 attendees will be randomly selected during the session to receive an AEOP Pocket Scientist or Engineer. Go check them out in the chat. And to start, the AEOP team would like to engage with all of you AEOP interns and fellows who are conducting active research in the labs nationwide. So please go to the chat and share where your internship or fellowship is located. This is a really great way to start connecting with each other. And we hope this is just the beginning of our engagement throughout the chat today. We're using the webinar function within Zoom, so you will not be able to turn on your voice or your camera. However, please continue to interact with each other within the chat and keep an eye out for updates from the AEOP team. For any questions that you have for our speakers, please be sure to use the Q&A function. And then at the end of our talk, our facilitator, Crystal, will voice your questions. Now I'd like to introduce our amazing facilitator, Crystal Jenkins. Crystal is an undergraduate communications co-op with the AEOP team this summer. Crystal, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Kira. Today, I would like to remind you guys that at the top of all of our speaker series, we'll be introducing new opportunities to you. Today, we'll hear from Dr. Emily Keene, who is the Deputy Director of DoD STEM with the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering Basic Research Office. In this role, she supports DoD STEM activities to implement the DoD STEM strategic plan, aiming to inspire and develop exceptional STEM talent from elementary school all the way through the workforce with a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Prior to this, Dr. Keene was a senior program analyst at Strategic Analysis Incorporated and a postdoctoral fellow with the National Academies of Science Research Apprenticeship Program at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. She holds a bachelor's in biology with concentrations in biochemistry and neuroscience from Kalamazoo College and a PhD in neuroscience from the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. Her academic career includes teaching and mentorship roles at the Boston Museum of Science and Harvard University. Take it away, Dr. Keene.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for that warm welcome, and thank you everyone for being here today. I am here on behalf, as you heard, of DoD STEM, and that's within the Office of the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering, which is a really long title. We joke here at Department of Defense that sometimes the longer title you have, the less work you do. So I'll let you do with that what you will. So if you can take us to the next slide. And so real quick, I don't think I need to tell this audience, but sometimes we like to be sure we're on the same page. A lot of times we get the question, why does the DoD invest in STEM education opportunities? And the reason that I hope you can all appreciate is we have a huge research enterprise here that stands behind the DoD, and you're going to hear more about that from all of these incredible speakers. But really important innovations have come out of DoD research, and that includes researchers who have civilian careers with the department. So those who are non-enlisted and who have really supported some really groundbreaking efforts across the department. So a few listed here, lots that you carry around in your pocket and your phone every day. You can thank the DoD and the scientists and engineers that work for the DoD for those innovations. Next slide. So if I have you take anything away from my quick rundown this morning, it's that I would encourage you all to go to dodstem.us. I'm going to be featuring a few slides here that showcase the types of things you can find on that website. This is the main source of information you can find that holds all of the information about education opportunities across the DoD, and that includes STEM camps, internships, apprenticeships, fellowships, scholarships, We do stuff in the competition space, and this is not only with our partners across the DoD, but also with funded partners who may be organizations you're familiar with, which you'll hear a little bit about. So you can search the opportunities across DoD at our opportunities page. And within there, you can filter by a specific audience. So for all of you, you'd want to search by student. You can filter by your state, the type of program you're looking for, the grade range you're looking for, etc. Next page, next slide. And I wanted to just highlight a few examples. I'm not going to focus on AEOP because I know y'all have already gotten exposure from that community. I will say they have robust opportunities. I encourage you to check out their work as well. And it's all included on our dodstem.us website. The first thing I want to highlight for this group is the huge and vast number of internship opportunities across the DoD, not just within AEOP or the Army facilities. So I also want to highlight the majority of these are paid internship opportunities within the department, and many of them allow students to join as early as high school. And I encourage you to start looking at those applications in the fall before the summer. You might want to participate because a lot of these may include some security and vetting measures that you may need to get ahead of that are out of cycle from some other internships and require you to apply a bit earlier. So I have examples here featured from across Navy, Air Force, some of our civilian sectors within DoD, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, etc. Next slide. A couple other things you might not think of when you think of DoD that I just want to highlight are summer programs and workshops. So for example, the U.S. Naval Academy offers an annual summer workshop for high school students. Air Force offers their Air Force Legacy program, which allows students starting as early as middle school to engage in camps that then leverage into internship and work-based experience programs. We also work within the DoD and across some of our partnerships to offer competition support. Many of you may already be familiar with FIRST Robotics, for example. DoD funds FIRST championship teams to compete who have a DoD mentor. So if you're already working with a FIRST team and you're interested in funding, check us out there. And we've also heard from some of our scholarship opportunities to include SMART and NDSEG. There are several others to consider as well. And again, everything I'm here showing you here is just a snapshot of the types of opportunities, and these are all directly accessible from that dodstem.us website. Next slide. The final few things I want to highlight that are available to you on this website are some things that go beyond just programming. So we have this online resources section that you might find things that are useful to you. It includes videos and different activities from across some of our partners as well as other federal agencies. So just like the Department of Defense invests in STEM education, so do our counterparts in the federal agencies, to include NASA, Department of Education, Department of Energy. We link to all of their websites from our own website, so you can explore some of their efforts in that space as well. And then next slide, please. The final thing I'll mention is our STEM careers page. And that is in case you're interested in pursuing a specific career and want to know more about what you can do in that space. So if you can take me to the next slide, I have sort of a few snapshots of what that looks like for a particular field. So this is looking specifically at engineering. And what you'll see when you go to one of these pages is you'll see information about the types of careers you might be able to explore with that degree. And then you'll have links on that same page that showcase programs across the DoD STEM community that align to that degree type, as well as featured videos from some of our scientists and engineers across the department who do work in alignment with that particular field. So we think this is a really helpful resource. If you don't know where to start, the careers page is a great one. If you just say, hey, I don't know, I kind of like biology, it's a great place to poke around and see what kinds of things might align to your interests. If you can take me to the next slide, I think that is everything I have. Yes. So another QR code, if you scan that, that will take you directly to that dodstem.us website. We're on all social media channels, not TikTok because, you know, security reasons, but we have everything else. And I'll be happy to address a couple questions if we have them and have the time. And otherwise, thanks everyone for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dean. These sound like great opportunities. And once again, participants, if you have any questions about anything, send them in the chat and we will make sure to get back to you. Moving forward, I would like now to introduce Dr. Rory Waterman, a professor of chemistry at the University of Vermont in inorganic and organometallic chemistry with the focus of catalysis. He began his tenure at UVM in 2006 after completing a Miller Research Fellowship at the University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Waterman earned his PhD in chemistry from the University of Chicago and his undergraduate degree from the University of Rochester. His research aims to develop catalytic methods of bonding main group elements like phosphorus, silicon, and germanium, leading to new materials with application in LED technologies. His work has received national and international recognition, and he has been elected as a Fellow of the American Association of Advancement of Science and the American Chemical Society, and has held visiting professor positions in Germany and Japan. Driven by an early interest in science, Dr. Waterman is dedicated to promoting broad participation in STEM. He has hosted numerous high school student researchers through programs like AEOP internships, helping students gain a deeper understanding of scientific research. Committed to supporting new scientists, he co-founded a national workshop for new chemistry faculty members in 2012 with the support of Research Corporation for Science Advancement. With over 20 years of experience in mentoring, Dr. Waterman emphasizes the importance of building networks and seeking help. His talk, titled Getting It All Done, Ideally on Time, will address time management skills and handling various demands effectively. For all the participants who have questions, make sure to use the Q&A function and we'll get to them right after Dr. Waterman's chat. Take it away.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. That was very kind. I'm working through some tech here. So, hey folks, I think that looks like a screen, although we're not presenting for whatever awesome reason. We'll get there in a second. I actually, the piece about Research Corporation and the work that we've done for new faculty has been through the Cottrell Collaborative. And so this is content that we give to new professors. And so about 700 new chemistry professors have seen this kind of content in the past. And so I hope it's relevant to you. And so you don't all see each other, but as was alluded to by Dr. King, there are high school students up through postdocs and everything in between who participate in these programs. And so, you know, the message has to be pretty general. And so hopefully we'll get to that. I want to give you two things to think about and two things you can possibly do when we're going to talk about time management, because for a lot of folks, this might seem something a little distant, but for some of you, maybe you've already hit that moment of going, I can't get everything done. And so we want to help you not have that sense, and we want to help you feel empowered. And so there's two really big ideas to think about. The first one is that time management as an activity, it's about decisions. It's about making priorities and setting priorities. And so I want to spend some time on that concept. And what's interesting is when we talk about priorities, at the end of the day, and making decisions, you're the decider. This is based on your thoughts and your goals. And so those are important to articulate to yourself and then act on. And so the two actionable steps that I wanted to bring to your attention for this is, the first one is to apply structures to help you make those priorities. Sometimes it feels really easy. I'll do this thing because it's important. I have this paper due tomorrow. I have this exam tomorrow. I need to study or write or do whatever. But actually life gets more complicated and you have more things to do. And so eventually you have to make some choices and prioritize. And so there are structures that you can apply to your life now to practice for when things become considerably more complex. The other thing is that technology can help. And so you know, technology changes all the time. It's not that there's something set, but there are tools that are out there that can help you. So you have probably heard this idea of work-life balance, and I show this image. And so for the folks on the earliest end of the AEOP spectrum, the folks who are in high school now, probably thinking like this looks incredibly remote, right? So like I go to school, you know, I live with my family maybe, and like this is not a thing. It catches up with you really fast. And the idea that you have things that you want to accomplish and that you have the rest of your life that you want to balance is really meaningful. And so it's not actually that distant of a concept. And there's certainly people in this space already who are feeling these pressures. So now, right, whether you're an undergraduate, a graduate student, or a high school student, you go to school, that looks different for everybody. And so what you'll notice, and you know, the older folks are appreciating that as you go farther along in school, there's less and less structure. You're expected to be at fewer places for less time, but to do more work. And so that's one piece of your life that is a constant and exists. But of course, you have built your identity on a bunch of other things that you do, you like, you pursue, whether that's, you know, music or art or sports or, you know, hobbies, you know, what you like to read, what you like to consume for media, whatever. And these are personal choices, and these are things that define you. In the middle of that, for the student group, of course, right, there are jobs. And ideally, this summer you're doing a fantastic job that is both, personally enriching, but helping you to leverage some professional goals as well. Please take maximum advantage of your internship or fellowship. And then, of course, there are pressures, right? So in high school, the sports were immediately after school. The hobbies were often immediately after school. Band practice was during school, things like that. The integration was really high. But, you still had to get to school, you had to get home, you possibly had to get to practice, you had to get to games or whatever. And so that balance starts pretty early on, that continuum of things that you choose to do versus the thing that you're obliged to do. And so now is the time to think about balance. And so that's why we're introducing this concept and helping you achieve this early so that you will be more prepared for it later in life. Okay. The whole motivation is really about you as a person. And so I'm going to invite you for a moment to think about these fixed identities. And so for some folks, this is a new term. For people, there are a set of ways in which you conceptualize yourself that don't change dramatically over time. They do change. They're fixed is a little bit of a misnomer, but they're pretty static. They're the things that you hang your hat on as you're a person. And I would like you, while I go through this a little bit, to think about 3 of your own personal fixed identities. And so to help you conceptualize those, I'll give you a few of my own. And so I think of myself a lot with respect to my nuclear family. So I'm married, I have a child, and so those gives me the identity of a husband and a father. So those are fixed identities for me. They haven't changed in a long time, and they won't change for a long time. I happen to see myself as the kind of scientist that I am. I am a chemist, and I've been a chemist for a long time. That to me is a defining feature. It's funny that when people ask me what I do for a living, I say that I'm a chemist and I work at a university. That's why professor is a separate thing. That's actually a job title, and it's consuming. It does its own thing, but it's sort of independent in my mind. And then the last one is another kind of identity. I'm active. I like to go hike. I like to do stuff outside with my family. And so these are things that help to define me. So in all that rambling, hopefully you have a list of 3 in your mind. And so the experiment here is to take the second one and then make it disappear. So for me, it's father, just take it off the list. I already know the answer to the question of how do you feel when that happens. It's a cornerstone identity. And so it feels terrible, the idea that you take one of these away arbitrarily. And so the point of this is to say you should be fixated on how do you preserve these things for yourself. And that's actually the whole point of time management and managing your life. And so don't use time as something that impinges on these things. Use your time as things that support the choices and the identities that you value. Why would I say that? It's because your identities are often being pushed against, whether they're intended to or not. The other motivation is just life as it is. And so this is a really interesting diagram. It's called a life rainbow. It's developed by this guy called Super. And so what it represents is age progression over time. And most of the folks that are in this audience are in this exploration phase of their life. And you'll notice that they identify a bunch of possible life roles. And this is not, of course, a complete list, but it represents a continuum of possibilities that are not independent. So you can always be a citizen and a parent, or a citizen and a student. But these are choices that people make about emphasizing what they do. And what is most interesting to me about this figure are 2 things. One is that the exploration phase is the briefest of them. And so it's useful to make the most of that time while you're exploring the possibilities and how that impacts the choices that you make that identify yourself for the rest of your life. The other thing is that almost everything on this diagram is actually out of your control. So environmental determinants are not personally controlled. Situational determinants are not personally controlled. And even these personal determinants are actually not the things that you control on your own. Psychology is built across experience. Biology is often influenced by genetics. And so there's a bunch of pieces to this that you have actually nothing to do with. So everything is about what you choose to do with your life under all these other constraints. So again, the idea is to empower you to be ready to make choices that are the things that you want. So at the end of the day, time management is about making decisions. And so how do you make those decisions? What is the system for doing that? And so I draw this very simple diagram to illustrate it. And so what you really want to do is you want to maximize the impact of a decision that you make with your time. And so the impact being the benefit to you or the benefit to your goals or the achievement toward your goals that you get. against cost. And the cost, of course, in this conversation has to be time. And so what are you looking for? You're looking for things that have high impact at low cost. And so that sounds great. That sounds like really ideal and obvious, but it in fact requires planning and choice. And what's even interesting about this is that you might look and nod and go, sure, that makes a ton of sense to me, but actually like the box is your choice too. It doesn't have to be a rectangle, doesn't have to be a box. It could be something that grows. So as impact increases, you may be willing to pay more in cost, for example. Those are all decisions that you make. And so the bigger question is really, how do you create priorities to put things in and identify what is worth your time to do? And so there's a bunch of ways that you can do this. My friend and colleague, Penny Boyning, and I, who've been doing this kind of training for a long time, she showed this priority list that she developed for herself. And I love it. I can't beat it. It's the best list I've ever seen for this. Her first thing is to avoid public humiliation. And I think that's a really great goal. And so, you know, for instance, we're here today, I'm giving a presentation. Of course, I'm talking in an empty room, but I am giving a presentation. And so I clearly needed to come up with slides and a plan and a message and be ready to do this today or to avoid public humiliation. That for me professionally includes aspects of my job like teaching or going out giving talks about my science. But then, so that being the major thing, I would like to avoid being humiliated. After that, I want to do other things that are productive. So, you know, work on my research, for example. And so that requires me to publish papers, get grants, et cetera, and support students. This is a bigger sort of activity. And so many folks, this is more likely to say your main job function, like what do you need to do every day so that you are succeeding at your job? And then within, you know, our profession, within Penny and I's profession, visibility externally. So, you know, being recognized by our peers for the activities that we engage in. So we have to go out in the community and talk about our science, talk about other things. And then the last thing in this 4-part list was internal visibility, the things we do with our colleagues on our campuses and how that impacts what we get to do and what we want to do. So this sounds great. And Penny's list is fantastic for a lot of reasons. And I think it makes a ton of sense, but it actually is not a decision tree. It is really a big set of bins. And so you are confronted with decisions every day about how you use your time. And this is not a good guide. It's just a general plan. It's really the question is, why is something important? And I have a quote here from former President Dwight Eisenhower, which I think is really telling. I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important and the important are never urgent. So this quote led to the widespread adoption of this, which was called the Eisenhower matrix, which is not something that he actually invented. It was invented before him, but he's attributed to, this is attributed to Eisenhower. And as was alluded to, there's urgent and not urgent at the top. There's important and unimportant at the bottom. And so he refers to things never being in this important and urgent box. He refers to things being not urgent, but important, and unimportant and urgent. And this is a decision tree. When you are confronted with something, you can look at it and say, well, let me put it in which of the 4 bins that matter, one of these things. And so Eisenhower is alluding to the fact that very few of the things end up in the top left quadrant. And that, you know, makes some sense. Like, oh, I want to do things that are important. You know, that's a good feeling. And clearly I want to do things that are important, and part of importance could be their urgency. So you might say, I want most of the stuff that I do to be in the top left. That's not really true. That's not really a good thing. There's a more detailed analysis, which is this Covey matrix. And so it's the same important, unimportant, urgent, not urgent quadrants. But now they're redefined, and actually when you think a little bit more about what the actual content is of a circumstance where you have an important and an urgent problem, you rethink it and you go, oh, I actually don't want those. That's not great. So an important and an urgent problem is a crisis. So for instance, you're out on a trip and you need to go home and you don't have a ride. Your ride called and said, I can't pick you up. So now you can't get home. That is important because you'd like to go home. And it's urgent because you'd like to go home that day. So that's a crisis that induces stress. That's a challenge. So you don't really want to work in that environment all the time. You don't want important, urgent problems because those are generally, you know, deeply problematic and immediate in a way that you don't want to manage. Unimportant, urgent problems are people coming to you, you know, and saying, I need an immediate fix to this thing, even though it doesn't really matter. So you don't want to work there. And then obviously nobody wants to deal with things that are unimportant and not urgent. So stuff that doesn't really matter, doesn't matter when it gets done. What you really would like is important problems with not an immediate outcome, because then you have the time to solve a problem well and to get to the solution that would be ideal for you. And important, not urgent things are your career goals. These are the goals in your life. And then you have time to work on them, to develop your vision, to revise what you do, and think about the activities that you undertake and whether or not they actually support those goals. So again, still broad strokes, not really at a proper answer yet. So the real deal about what makes something important is, in fact, to set a goal. And I have a feeling that most of the folks here are learned about SMART goals in their education and conceptualize a lot of goals in this way. And I think SMART goals are great. They make a ton of sense, but they're not useful for this kind of conception. So SMART goals, for the reasons that that are actually why they're SMART goals, are the reasons that we don't want to think about them. Part of your long-term life career type goals are that they may or may not be attainable, and that's okay. What we're really looking about are pyramidal goals, where the most important things at the top. And so another thing that Dr. Keene alluded to was a bunch of these opportunities are at defense labs around the country. I think there was a couple of folks in the call from a couple of the defense labs. And so Anna, for instance, let's say you're a student, you visit Air Force Research Lab in Ohio, and you think it's great. And you say, I want to be at the Air Force Research Lab in Ohio. And I go to the DoD STEM site and I look up what physicists could do there. Looks like the kind of science I want to do. I want to solve these cool problems. That's where I want to be. That's a fantastic goal. To do that science, you may need a PhD. That's also a great aspirational goal. But actually, we've set ourselves up now to not be a SMART goal, right? So there may never be an opening again at the AFRL, so you may not be able to go to that particular facility. But it's a great goal to work toward because it's specific, it's long term, and it requires sub goals. To get a PhD in physics, you need to do an undergraduate degree in STEM, generally physics, to be prepared to go to grad school in physics. So that makes sense. That's a step. To then be admitted to grad school, to then earn your PhD and move on. So that sets you up to have real tasks that are really meaningful, that are actionable steps that you can proceed forward with. So by developing that long-term vision, this is what I want in life, then you can set yourself with realistic goals that get you there. That's when you have real decision-making power, because you might be confronted with something that then allows you to say, I don't need to do that. That isn't getting me toward my goal of being a physicist at the Air Force Research Lab. It's a sidestep, it's neat, it's interesting, but it doesn't help me. And that is really the biggest trick with time management, because you'll be confronted with all kinds of decisions over time. And so you need to decide what is worth your time to do. That then leads to part of the other side of this. So I showed that lovely picture of work-life balance. And so there are times at which there should be very much a distinction between your work life and your personal life. And then there's some times where there shouldn't be, and there's good reasons for that. So Anna, for instance, I am very bad at taking vacations. Like I just am lousy at scheduling time and making that happen. So what I have found that works for me, because that's a valuable life thing to take time for yourself to recharge, is that I tend to add a day on or 2 days on to professional travel, and then have a 1 or 2 day recharge time, as opposed to a set aside week-long vacation. And so there's a place where making a choice of time to mix things works better than not. And at the end of the day, it's always the same thing. You're the decider. When you set the goals and you set the sub goals, then you're the one who's in charge of the choices. And that's really all that matters. It doesn't matter what other people say. It's great to hear advice from other people, but you, at the end of the day, are making the choices. Okay. So importance comes from your goals, but then how do you make the individual tasks important, right? And so what do I mean by that? In any day, choosing between 2 assignments for school. So how do I choose to do this one over that one? Or why is this one more important than that one? So there's a lot of other factors in it, but at the end of the day, you make things important, and you make things important by giving them time. And so I just show generic calendar page here. And I show the calendar page because this is a piece from an activity that I do with my graduate students every couple of years, is that I give them blank calendars, give them a color code, and I say, I don't want this thing back. I want you to think about your professional time. So you're here. What are you doing in that time? Are you running experiments? Are you reading about, chemical literature? Are you hanging out in the hall talking? Are you taking, a structured break? Are you doing other things? And so really with the idea of the self-reflection of, oh, I think I'm doing a really good job with my time, but it turns out actually I spend far less of the time on the tasks I think I do, and far more of the time that I spend on tasks that actually don't help me at all. And it's not to say that there's any criticism in this. You may work in certain ways that make a ton of sense. Like I can work straight for 2 hours, but after the end of 2 hours, I have to take a brain break. I need to get up for 15 minutes. I take a walk. I can't do anything else. If that's you, that's you. That's what it is. But knowing that is more important than pretending that you can do something you can't. So activities in which you think about what you're actually doing during time and how that impacts meeting your goals is more important than anything else. And so then at the end of that, what it allows you to do is to go to your calendar, and it is useful to maintain your own digital calendar and then start to block time to work. One of the classic things that I tell students is that, human beings we're not given the ability to write. We write because we made this activity up, and so does work. So if you don't book time to write, you're not going to do the work. So it's one of those things where, when I teach students courses where there's writing, I say, please think about booking every day a piece of time to do writing and set goals. And so that works for everything in your life, whether it is your schoolwork or applications or hobbies or anything. Booking that time and making sure that it is dedicated to the task that you wanted it to be is very important. At the end of the day, we'll all have multiple obligations. Those obligations will increase over time, particularly with responsibility. So as you proceed through your careers, you will become responsible for more things and therefore have more obligations. It does matter to keep track of things. As silly as it sounds, I am a handwritten list person. I like writing down lists by hand, and I love crossing things out on a piece of paper. It just makes me feel like I got something done, even if it's trivial. So that's my trick. It may not be your trick. You may prefer to use digital listing or whatever, but keeping track is what matters. You need a decision-making process when multiple tasks come up. So I know, early on, it just feels like everything is an assignment and you have no choice, but eventually you will get more and more choice. And the decision-making process does partly stem from this Eisenhower type matrix. There are things that are important and urgent. They have to get done. You have to figure out how to get home when your ride disappeared. Like, that's no choice. For other things, you can start to think about practices that figure out how to save your time and still meet the demand that's being made. And so I use this, 4D system: delete, delay, diminish, and delegate. So, I ask questions. I ask useful questions about a task. When somebody asks me to do something and they say, I need it tomorrow, the question is, do you really need it tomorrow? Could it wait a day? Could it wait 2 days? That's delaying. When they say, oh, I want 2 pages on this thing, is it really that you want 2 pages? Would 1 suffice? Would a bulleted list suffice? What's the goal? How can I meet your goal in a way that makes sense? Is this something that I need to do, or is it something that somebody else is better qualified or else needs to do? And so asking reasonable questions about work that comes in means that you do the work that matters for your goals versus work that doesn't need to get done. And then, it's a reasonable question to say, when is everything going to happen? And, sometimes you just make choices, and it is either not the best work that you wanted to do, and that's because there are too many things, or you elect not to do something, or you choose not to do a different thing. And so that's when the decision-making process is value-based. When it is urgency-based, it is not useful. You usually do not decide things well when you're confronted with multiple immediate deadlines. It's more that you set yourself up in advance to say, I prioritize this thing is most important to me. I will dedicate my time to this particular activity. So for organizations, so for more practical things, time is always the limit. You're always going to run out of time first. I recommend that you think about how you work with the world. The world does certain things, so you will be in places and you will have expectations, but how you communicate with things and how you engage and disengage and stop are rules that you set for yourself. And so when you manage your time and you decide on how you communicate, those are important things. I'm a big fan of electronic calendars because managing your calendar, setting time for tasks, setting time for yourself, setting time so that you protect, that's really useful. And then task managing is useful as well. So I mentioned doing lists. So sometimes it's useful just to have lists of tasks that are important and long term. And so, who are your contacts for the things that you need to do and the deadlines that need to happen. I do a lot of things on paper, but I also do digital lists as well. There's plenty of organizational software. I mentioned Slack, Google Teams, etc. There's a lot of places where you can actually put this stuff together for yourself. It's trial and error. I'm not here to sell you something. I'm here to just share with you the fact that there are tools that make this work easier for you. And the thing that is either not going to exist later or not something that somebody's going to be used. So try not to get too hung up on any one thing because, in fact, it changes. The last big point is that you want to actually live your life and meet your goals. And so always remember what's important to you. So I mentioned that work-life balance thing because, as I mentioned, my first two fixed identities are about my family. So those are important to me. And so I have to make priorities in order to maintain that part of my identity. And so how do I keep that for myself while doing the other things I want to do? In many ways, it involves simplification. So don't duplicate things. Don't strive to do everything. Choose the things that matter to you. Choose the things that support multiple goals. And that's the most useful strategies that you can be engaged in. So you may abandon things that are new or new technology or new whatever because they don't matter to you because you're not meeting your particular goal. And then, of course, as always, take care of yourself first. Never sacrifice sleep, never sacrifice diet, never sacrifice exercise or personal time to do other things. I will attest, I was a college student who never pulled an all-nighter. I was not an A student, and maybe those are related. I don't know, maybe they're not, but it's the choice of, I'm not going to not sleep at night for an assignment. It's not worth it to me. There's a line there. It's a value judgment. And so in summary, it's the same thing. So you're making value judgments, you're making choices. So pick your system and use it. You can use the quadrant model, you can use whatever, but it's your consistent system about how you make decisions. It's entirely based on your value set, your goals. Don't yield on the important stuff. You have goals, and so set your goals and be fixed to those goals. Sometimes you'll get a little bit pushed away, but you ultimately can reset. And then apply structures that help you manage your time. So take advantage of technology, as I'm suggesting. Use calendar management, use technology, use whatever, but it's not all about technology. At the end of the day, you have to make the decisions and put the things in the calendar and decide for yourself. So I highly recommend that you look to your network. So, parents and guardians, trusted adults, people who you see, who seem to have their act together, probably have very good suggestions. They probably have figured some things out. So talk to them about, the feelings of being overwhelmed or busy when you have them, so that you're prepared to not have those feelings in the future. It's also at those moments of crisis where you're not prepared to change your systems. You need to deal with the crisis at hand and then change your systems and be prepared for the future. There are millions and millions of resources on this. There are books, there's videos, there's whatever. It is with so many other things, it's personal choice. If there's something that resonates with you, try it, do it, whatever, but take everything with a grain of salt. These are people trying to sell videos, books, whatever at time. So that's the stuff I wanted to share with you. Again, it's decision making and you are the decider, but there are tools at hand. And so happy to answer anybody's questions.
Thank you so much. This is an amazing presentation, and we do have some questions starting off with, how do you balance long-term projects with short-term tasks?
Yeah, that is the calendar management trick. So it is a big change in life. So I can think about this as for myself when I was a student, particularly in high school and then going to college, it was like one thing at a time. I'm going to do this homework and do the next thing. And the biggest sort of a time management adult thing was to go, I'm going to work on this project for an hour and stop, and then transition to a different project for some period of time, and then transition to something else, knowing that I have to come back and get the things done.
Okay. Another question was, how do you prioritize tasks when faced with multiple deadlines?
It is definitely the important and urgent thing. And then what deadlines can be are more flexible. So, does it need to be that thing? Does it need to be done by me? What can I move and how can I shuffle things?
Can you share any time management techniques specifically suited for STEM-related tasks and projects that
Yep.
you have to share if there's any extras?
No, it's definitely, it works for everyone. It's all the calendar management. So like booking things in your calendar 4 times to do work, including breaks, including time for yourself. That is why understanding how you work helps a lot. It is harder in STEM because there's often a lot of flexibility about the things you're doing. So folks in experimental science, it turns out, right, it never takes the amount of time you think,
Mhm.
but then being efficient in that time as well.
Okay. A few more questions. Student asked, throughout your talk, you mentioned that you were a decider. Do you have any advice for students that may not feel like they are a decider due to family or outside pressures?
You have pressures, but right, you still have choice within those pressures, right? So it's not, a good example is that sometimes students feel like I can't go too far from my family because I have this obligation to be nearby. That's fine. That's great. That's you're being a supportive family member. And so then the question is what opportunities are present for you in that space, and then what are you going to choose to take advantage of within that space?
Do you have any specific tools or apps that you specifically use to manage your time effectively, or any suggestions for the participants?
I try to be a good employee, and so I manage my work time on my work calendar, which is Outlook. And then, again, because we're a Microsoft campus, we use Teams as our platform as opposed to say Slack or Google or some other thing. But any of those, they all work. I used Slack for a while before we got Teams. I used different calendars before Outlook. So it's all essentially the same thing. And when you have choice, you can just choose the functionality you like.
Okay. And then finally, what do you do when you feel overwhelmed?
Take a walk. Sometimes it is helpful not to spin your wheels. It's helpful to just pause and say, I really need to do the thing that helps me. Take a walk, have some tea, whatever the thing is, go talk to somebody who you feel like you can unpack with. That's stress management. That I'm sure would be another helpful AEOP seminar at some point. So take advantage of that and then come back and feel refreshed and say, I can do what I need to do. I'll get these things done.
Well, I would like to thank you so much. I know this has especially been helpful for me as a rising sophomore in college. So I'll be using some of these tips as well as our participants as well. I would like to remind everybody to send in pictures from wherever you're watching in order to win some free swag. We want to all thank you, Dr. Waterman, as well as Dr. Keene, for your amazing presentations. We appreciate everybody for being here and attending our very last webinar of our AEOP Internships and Fellowships 2024 Speaker Series. I can definitely say we're going out with a bang. Our team at AEOP is always excited to hear and share your stories. And we want to thank you all for joining us today. If you have any further questions about anything that was talked about, you can email us. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone.